Hi, I'm Millie. Today's guest is a very special friend. He used to be an American football player, but after an injury, he took a completely different path. He came to a place most of foreigners and even many Chinese have never been to, the mountains of Gujo. He didn't come to visit. He came to stay. Let's hear how that journey changed him.
Hi friends, good to see you. But I can't see you, you can see me. 大家好，我是马太，你们的朋友。
That's Chinese. So glad to have you today. As I know, from an American football player to teaching in the mountains of Guizhou, China, I think it's a big transition. So can you tell us how all this started?
Sure. So like you said, I was a football player in college. I played for Clemson Tigers. It's a team in South Carolina, big football school. And I had my dream set on going to the NFL and playing professional football. Mm-hmm. And then senior year, 2 linemen fell in the back of my knee at practice and dislocated my kneecap. And 3 surgeries later, I gave up football. I couldn't keep doing it. I couldn't run as fast anymore with my injury. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what to do with my life. Mm-hmm. And I just decided, hey, I think I want to go somewhere in the world and find somewhere to help people. Mm-hmm. Somewhere people need help, and I'll help them however I can. And so I started looking. And a friend of mine, a football buddy, called me and he said, hey, Matt, I'm in backwoods China in Guizhou in the mountains.
Oh, so your friend is in Guizhou then?
Yeah, my friend is in Guizhou. Mm-hmm. And he said, I've been out here a year all alone, and they want another teacher at the school that I'm teaching at, and they can't afford to pay anything. No one wants to come out here. Everyone wants to go to Beijing or Shanghai. Yes. Do you want to come? And I said, sure.
So you mean your friends at the time is also teaching in Guizhou as a volunteer?
Yeah. My friend, he had come to China the year before in 2008 to help after the earthquake in Sichuan. So he was doing rescue efforts and digging wells and providing fresh water and stuff. And then after that, he met a family and they convinced him to move to Guizhou and to teach a year at the school in the mountains in the poor area.
Yes.
It's a minority area in Qiananzhou.
Yes.
And so there's a large population of Bui and Miao and Shui.
Yes, ethnic minority, 少数民族.
Yes. And so he moved there and did it for a year. And then after that, he heard that I was wanting to come and help somewhere. And he had played football in college too, so that's how we knew each other. And he said, he gave me a call and said, hey, another football guy, I'd love to have someone out here that, I can buddy up with. Will you come? I said,
yes.
Yeah, you need me? Okay, I'll come.
Wow. So when you made that decision, you want to teach in the mountains in Guizhou. That is a place you've never been before, right?
Oh no, I'd never heard of it. I didn't know anything about China even. To me, China was a complete I hadn't learned anything about it. I didn't know the difference between China and North Korea. I kind of thought they were the same. Yeah.
So what about your parents and your friends around you? Do they think it's a kind of a crazy decision?
No, I think I got a lot of encouragement from my family. I think my father was encouraging me to do it because it was to help other people. And my dad was a pastor at a church. So growing up, I went on mission trips with my church and went to different places where people were in need and would help them for a week or 2 weeks. And those were always really influential experiences in my life. And so when I decided, okay, I'm going to do it for a year, then, everyone around me, both my parents, they thought it was a good idea. At least, they're at least helping other people. They thought that was good.
It's because you born in a religious family, right?
Yes, yeah. So, and my family has a long heritage of that kind of stuff. My mother's parents, my grandparents, were missionaries in Brazil for 40 years in the Amazon rainforest. And I also have other ancestors who were missionaries around the world.
Wow.
So yeah, it was encouraged. Yeah.
You already mentioned your relatives, so because you send me so many materials, because in this all of this information, the part of your grand aunt and grand uncle is so touched.
Yeah.
So when you make a decision want to teach in Gujo, do you know the story of them?
I didn't know the story at all. So I knew when I went to China, I knew that my grandfather had been in Brazil for 40 years. My mother grew up there. And so, and she had told me from a young age, oh, your grandfather, he really wanted to go to China, but he couldn't go, close the border. And so he ended up going to Brazil. And that's all I had ever heard about China. And then, so when this opportunity came up to teach there and to help people somehow there, then I thought, oh, this is, actually at the time, I didn't think of this, to be honest. At the time, I remember thinking, wow, China teaching English in the mountain, it sounds so boring.
So boring?
I don't want to do this. Yeah.
Why do you think it's so boring?
Because I think growing up in the States, we didn't learn anything about China at all. I didn't know about Asia.
You was born in 1980s,
I was
right?
born in 85. Yeah.
But you still have no idea about China.
In our school system, we didn't really learn about Asia at all. It just kind of, I knew where it was, but I didn't know anything about it. It just kind of seemed, in my mind, that it would be the most boring place in the world. And so
Okay.
I had, before my friend in China reached out to me to teach there, I had heard of other opportunities to go to China and to teach. And I had always thought, okay, that sounds bad. Please let me find something else, anything else.
And I've heard of so many foreign friends, they say their opinion about China, they have a stereotype, like every Chinese can play Kung Fu because they know this from the Kung Fu movie, like
Kung Fu and Ping Pong.
Kung Fu and Ping Pong.
Yes.
Okay.
But anyway, I didn't know the story about my aunt until I had been in China about 2 years.
Oh, who told
And
you?
so my grandmother, she passed away, and I went home for the funeral. And at the memorial service afterwards, a guy came up to me and he was holding this book. And I'm sorry, this is actually my other relative story.
It's okay.
So he was holding this book, and he said, "Do you know that your great uncle was in the Flying Tigers?" And I said, "What? No, I didn't know that." And he had a book. He said, "My father, your great uncle, he was in the Flying Tigers, and he, was, fought in China." And during World War II, and he had the whole history of it in his book, and so that's so I went up to my mom and said, "Mom, this is crazy. I have a relative who was in China before." And she goes, "Yeah, and you also my aunt, Aunt Laura was there too." And I said, "What? Aunt Laura? What about her?" And she said, "Your aunt was in China before World War II, before your great uncle went with the Flying Tigers. Your great aunt was there as a missionary and a nurse for her whole life. And she lived in the city of Wuhu and opened several hospitals there. And then the story is that when the World War II happened and the Japanese invaded, and most of the foreigners left and went home. But my great aunt, her Chinese friend was sick, so she stayed behind and to take care of her friend, and then she was put in a concentration camp. by
For
the
years.
Japanese. And so that camp is actually in Shanghai, and it's the today it's the Yan'an Zhongxue, the Yan'an middle school or high school. I said, Mom, this is crazy. I have a relative who was in China. Why didn't you tell me this? And she said, I've told you this story so many times. You just never listen to me. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't listen. But apparently she had told me the story before, but it wasn't until then.
You didn't pay attention.
I didn't pay attention. To me, it was just, it was like nothing. I didn't know, telling me of relative was in China, it just went right over my head because it meant, nothing until I was there and I'd been in China for multiple years by this point, and I'd already felt like, I feel like China's my second home, and I feel like part of my heart is, Chinese, and like, why am I having these feelings like this?
It's
and
like
so,
destiny.
Yeah, so when I found that out, it was like, it makes sense because my family has been there before. I actually have a history in China. And I was like, oh, of course I've been feeling this, it's like, it's destiny that I'm here.
Yeah. Did your grand aunt meet your grand uncle there in China?
No, so they weren't, the two of them weren't married. It was actually my great aunt, Zui Po is in Chinese. And so it was my mother's aunt, so my great aunt, my grandmother's sister. And she was there. She was single her whole life. She never married.
Okay. So I misunderstand.
Yeah, and my great uncle was on my grandfather's side. One of his, I forget which
it's okay.
relation, but he was the younger generation.
So do they know each other? Is the time, overlapped then, back then?
The time definitely overlapped, because she was in China when he was, flying with the Flying Tigers. And so, I'm sure they knew each other somehow, but I don't know how much contact they had. Yeah.
What touched me the most is, even the war is already ended, but your great aunt, she decided to stay in China.
Yeah. So after the war, right, she actually, they released everyone from the camp, and she went back to the U.S. to visit family.
She had a chance to go back to the United States.
And she, but when she went back, she had she already had a health condition from being in the camp, and she knew she was going to die. And so she said, well, I'm going to say goodbye to my family, but I'm going to go back home to China because I want to live the rest of my life in China. So she went back to China and she passed away there.
So you mean she wants back to the United States and then she decided to back to China again?
Yeah.
And then lay to rest there.
She wanted to lay to rest in China.
Wow.
And there's the story goes that her friends, at great risk to their own lives, snuck her body from Shanghai back across communist lines to Wuhu to bury her there. So we, several years ago, we actually went and searched for her grave in Wuhu and Shanghai. And it was a very moving experience. I got to see the concentration camp that she was in. There's a building still there that commemorates it. And then we searched some of the graveyards for her grave. And unfortunately, we didn't find her grave, but I was just very moved that I had family who cared so much about China.
Yes.
And so it kind of makes sense how I ended up, I really went to China not caring at all about it. And then it became the most, one of the most important parts of my life.
Yes, because it's very touched, very moved, because when you think you almost at the same age as your aunt and did exactly the same thing, like connect your youth closely to China.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow.
It's like fate.
Yes.
I don't know.
It's like the destiny connection, right? Okay. Wow. So when you know this, when you know a story about your aunt, so what's your feeling?
I just felt it was almost like confirmation for me. Because I'd been having some experiences in China where I would all of a sudden I'd be in a restaurant and I'd all of a sudden look around and realize, I'm white. Like, I'm not like everyone here. But normally I would feel like this was my home. And sometimes, like, when I'd fly back to China, land at the airport, and I would get a feeling in my heart like, I'm home. And I'd look around and be like, no, this is not my home. Like, but my heart would feel like I was at home. And
for how long you have this feeling? You feel you are no longer a stranger, like the name of our series.
Yeah, so I was a bit confused. And then
like 2 years when you living in China, you think you are not a stranger again?
Yeah, it happened pretty fast. By the second year I was in China.
Okay.
I remember my second year in Gujo, I already felt like this is my city. It was my home. You know, Duyun was my home, and every day I get on the bus, same bus, and every day I go to the school. Duyun. Yeah. D-U-Y.
It's the mountain you do teaching?
Yeah, it's a small city in the mountains, and
Actually, I never heard this.
Yeah, most people in China don't even know where Guizhou is, the province. And it's, the characters kind of mean like more clouds. Right? Almost like Doyun, but it's city of clouds, right? You could say. And it's true because every day there it was cloudy, and every other day it was kind of drizzling, rainy, you know.
Okay.
But it was my home, and I loved it. And so the second year I would get on the same bus every day to go to the school. And I remember I got on the bus one day, same bus, and I couldn't even stand up straight on it. They called it a minbao chu,
Minivan, right?
mini bus, yeah. And everyone on the bus just started laughing at me, right? Which wasn't uncommon, but this one day it just hit me. I was like, why are they laughing at me? This is my home. I'm like them, right? I'm the same.
Yes.
But they didn't see me as that. You know, they saw me as a tall foreigner. And so, yeah, I already started feeling like it was my home. And so when I found out that I had a connection with China, more than just me being there, you know, living there for several years, then it really hit like, oh my goodness, it's like fate. It's like,
yes.
You know, I was led here, and it's like it was meant to be. I was very, very moved by it. Still am.
Yeah.
His first class, total disaster. He couldn't even say hello in Chinese right. But he stayed because something in that moment, a child's laughter maybe, changed how he saw everything. Next episode, he tells us why he came back to Guizhou again. See you soon.